Let's talk supply chain. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So let's kick things off with a question. Waterborne vessels are the leading transportation mode for U.S. international trade in goods. But what percentage of trade by value was handled by the nation's port in 2022? Let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because I'll let you know at the end of the show. So today I am joined by an exciting transportation solutions provider, and they are called Lynxis. So Lynxis provides the leading edge solutions that enable owners and operators of cargo terminals to transform infrastructure, equipment, technology, and labor workforce silos into one highly orchestrated model. And it's Larry Cuddy, founder and CEO at Lynxis, that is joining me for the show today. Now, Larry has 25 years experience in supply chain, leading organizations in transportation and technology. And with the expertise in operations, finance, and commercial, Larry has consistently built collaborative, high-performance teams with a proven track record of accelerated delivery on a global stage. And today, Larry and I are going to be talking all about Lynxis, what they do, consolidating solutions to meet the demand of highly interconnected industry, eliminating the risks that slow the flow of cargo, and why the landside logistics facilities of tomorrow are going to look totally different than they do today. So welcome to the show, Larry.
Sarah, thank you so much. Great to see you again in the virtual. Always a pleasure. And thanks for having me back, by the way. Yes, we're really excited to share with you part of the Lynxis story and how we're going to move forward in this space. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I mean, it's been a little while since you were last on the show,
Yeah.
but I have seen you in person since then. We've been at some events together. I've interviewed you on panels, but it's nice to have the time, just the two of us here on the show, to talk about your latest venture. And I'm really excited to hear more about this endeavor. So let's start talking about you because you've been in supply chain for over 25 years, and people might not realize that you've worked for more than one of the industry's biggest names like DHL, Envase, WiseTech, just to name a few. So can you give us a taste of your journey and your experience across supply chain?
Sarah, it's my journey is so special to me because I love what I do, right? So when you look at this, I have to pinch myself because it's really not a job to me. For all the things that I've done, whether it be in the financial aspect or whether it be in the sales and marketing aspect or the operations aspect, I feel so blessed that I've been able to navigate my way through this supply chain environment, only to wake up every day to still love what I do and be passionate about it. And that's really what has driven me to what I'm doing today, right? I mean, you've heard a little bit about this before, that this all started with my grandfather, right? When I'm 5 years old in a truck. And so today I'm still driving and I still have my CDL and I still am amped about all the different things that I see in supply chain. And so for me, that move to how do I solve a problem and what are the problems in this space? And that's what has driven me each and every aspect of the way is identify the problem, come up with a solution for it and solve it. And so that journey for me, even though it started back when I was 5, 6 years old in a truck with my grandfather, has what I call moved from trucking to technology, right? So it's this trucking to technology journey that we are in and I am in now. And then I'm, again, very blessed that I've also had this fantastic team around me to go solve these problems. And, that's the part that just, again, I feel incredibly blessed that this is.
Listen, I remember the first time we met, and it was over dinner in Vegas because
Yeah,
I think it was the first manifest, which is
it was.
crazy.
That's right.
Yeah, Brian
Right.
Glick introduced us. You and I clicked right away. But one of the things that I love that you said was that you really get involved with the team, regardless of what area they're working in. And you would go and drive the trucks with the drivers and, find out what it is that they're going through. What are the challenges that they're having? What are they thinking about? What's going through their minds? What
Yeah.
would kind of solve some of those those things that sort of nitpick at you every day that are stopping you from enjoying your job. And I just love that about you. You kind of get your hands dirty and you just want to solve not only the issue for the industry, but also for the people along the way that are doing some of these tough jobs.
Thanks for remembering that, because that truly is part of our internal and our team's model is that, hey, if I ask somebody to clean the toilet, I've already cleaned the toilet 1,000 times and I'm the best toilet cleaner in the company, right? And so I know how to do it from start to finish, and it's spotless, right? And so we lead by example, and that's a model that we take through every aspect of our company.
Awesome. I love that. So you're now with Lynxis. Why don't you give
Yeah.
us a bit of an introduction? Tell us what you do. How do you help your customers? I mean, at the top of the show, I was like, you're transforming the industry and it's going to look so much different tomorrow. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So you know what? Linksys is, it's a combination of a number of different things. And so let me even back up there. The name is actually two environments that are bridged together from a star perspective and from a galaxy perspective. And so that's actually how we came up with the name. We always like to come up with unique names about how we're doing and what we're doing. And so Lynxis is that. And so Lynxis at its core is really transforming landside logistics today, right? And so when you start to look at the facilities that are out there, we are designing this platform, and it's designed for, the asset owner and for the operator. And in that premise, and in those premises, there are, really three things that are core to that. Is how do you move cargo in an increased velocity, right? And then how do you do that in less space? Because premium is out of real estate, regardless of what part of the country that you're in, or North America, or the globe for that matter. And then how do you reduce your operating costs? So when you start to look at that and look at the problem set, the common denominator here for terminals and optimizing terminals, and that's really where we're going, is terminals all have this problem, is that you need to bring a container in and you need to bring a container out, regardless of your size, whether you're the smallest or small, or whether you're the largest of the large, right? And when I mean terminal, let me define what that means, right? So it can be a rail terminal, it can be a marine terminal, it can even be a depot, right? So we look at those aspects, and then we start to look at and listening to our customers, because we've done a lot of that over the last 6 months, 8 months. And so when we start to look at that, we want to focus on a number of things. How do we automate operations? How do we improve accuracy? How do we increase throughput and velocity? And then how do you enhance visibility? Again, really overspoken words, overused buzzwords, et cetera, but we're really focusing in on that. And then more importantly, how do you look at capacity and utilization in order to drive optimization, right? So those are all the things that if you check those boxes in the Lynxis platform, on the output of that, you're going to get reduced costs, and you're also going to get this great benefit that we all globally can benefit from, which is, reduced emissions, right? So if we start to look at how to reduce the carbon footprint, because we're doing less with more, while focusing on what I call our next best move. So at Lynxis, it's all about what is your next best move? How do you set yourself up for that next best move to optimize?
I love that. Optimization. You did use a couple of buzzwords. I mean,
I
let's be
did. I'm
honest.
sorry.
But they're still very relevant to what we're talking about, because
Yeah,
we're still not completely automated. We're still not
we're not.
completely optimized. And
We're not.
until we get to that point, we actually can't make too much of a difference to what we do on a daily basis. But I like the fact that you included sustainability in that. So I just recently did a show and we talked about the top 10 supply chains. And I think it was 4 out of the top 10 are looking to reduce the emissions. They have goals by 2025, 2030. Those are coming up very quickly. So
Yeah.
what is it that we're doing? Who are we partnering with? What are these platforms that we can collaborate with to make sure that we are hitting those goals? And it sounds like Lynxis is one of them. Now, you mentioned a little bit about who your customers are, but I believe you serve a few different markets. So what businesses are you working with inside those markets? Like, do you have an ideal client?
We do. Yeah. So again, we really focus on the stakeholders, right? And the stakeholders to us are the asset owners and the operators. So the asset owner can be, again, a marine terminal, a rail terminal, or a depot, right? So those are the folks that, and then sometimes even though that you're the owner, you're not necessarily the operator, right? So you've got two buckets that you want to make sure that you can cross over and create some value for each one of those. In that, we look across the entire supply chain for that. So it's what I call our birth to destination movement, right? And so we want to make sure that it goes from cradle to grave. And within that each one of those stakeholders, you have different areas that you need to focus on. Sometimes the asset owner might be a little bit different than the operator, and the operator has to be a little bit different from the asset owner, but sometimes they can be different, but they have perhaps different business use cases and they need different outcomes. We want to make sure that we include both of those in marine, rail, and depot.
Well, and I think the biggest point here is collaboration and how do we get all of those different stakeholders to collaborate? I think that has been one of the challenges. We're going to get into the challenges in just a minute, but one of the challenges is because they all have different outcomes that they want to make sure that they hit. In order for it to be a win-win situation, there's got to be collaboration with different results. So a lot of times when we use that word, people are thinking, well, everybody needs to just get behind the same result. Well, no, not necessarily. There's a way to collaborate and have different results. So talk to us about those challenges. Like, what are the challenges? I think there's some challenges in infrastructure, sustainability, which you mentioned earlier, labor cost. It's a little bit tough right now. So what are the biggest challenges from your perspective faced by those terminals and landside logistics facilities at the moment?
So again, great question. And, I could really elaborate for a long time on this, and I'll try to keep it at
there's so much going on.
Yeah, there's so much going on, right? So when Lynxis looks at a terminal, we want to make sure that we look at it from the ground up, right? So we want to go in at the lowest level, make sure that we understand what the terminal is trying to accomplish. Like, what are their goals? What are they trying to achieve, right? And sometimes there's different business use cases that happen just within the terminal. You have one group that wants this, one group that wants that, one group that wants this. So we're looking at it from the ground up, and then we're tailoring our solutions to make sure that we're solving those problems for each one of the stakeholders that was within that terminal, right? And so I believe, Sarah, that's also part of the challenge is that you have this, hey, it's that person's fault, right? If that person's fault, well, it's not mine. So you have this shift in blame game, right, that goes on. So obviously, with tech and automation, it's super, super important. And that's also major important in order to accomplish it. But we've also identified, again, I'll get back to the challenge. And the challenge is how do you find the resources in order to run these facilities? That's really big, right? So when not only when you find that person, how do you train that person? How do you make them operate? What do you do next when you get that person? So we're taking this really novel approach and we're saying, okay, aside from bundling the infrastructure and the workforce component together, we are offering a turnkey solution to the operator to say, hey, we've taken a look at this. Not only, yes, we get it, tech is important. Yes, automation is important, but we've got to look at the infrastructure side. We've got to look at the workforce side. Nobody's approached it from that perspective yet. Zero. There isn't one company that's doing that today, right? So again, sorry for these acronyms because I'm from Boston, as you know, so I always use these different acronyms. So it's a one throat to choke model, right? So when you
say that again, what was that?
Yeah, what's that?
Say that again.
It's with my Boston accent or without my Boston accent?
No, either.
It's the one throat to choke model, right?
Oh, so, got it.
So from that perspective, right, we want to make sure that we own and shepherd in those problems and understand those problems, so we eliminate the blame game, because that's where part of the challenge is, aside from staffing and resources, but it's also this blame game. Right. And so we want to eliminate that by saying, no, we'll own it. We got it. And we will take care of it.
There. Well, and also from a workforce standpoint, I mean, there's a lot of people saying that they can't find people for jobs and different things like that. And it's only going to get worse if we're not upskilling ourselves, if we're not looking at different ways for us to be able to work or provide value to the company that we're working for and things like that, because things are shifting all the time and we do need to upskill. There's a lot of technology coming into place and there are
a lot of vaporware too, Sarah. There's a lot of vaporware as well. There's a lot of tech and there's a lot of vaporware.
Well, and also, I mean, some of the challenge too is that some of those skills are going out and people aren't coming up to replace some of the trades, right? Which is, I would assume at the terminals, probably a big resource challenge as well.
Huge. It's backer. And you have the complexity not only at the terminal, where it's located, right? So you've got not only, the generic problem of the industry, but then you have, the problem from where it's regionalized or localized or nationalized, right? So it's a big issue.
Yeah. And so because of all these challenges at Lynxis, your aim is to transform terminal operations from the ground up, which is what you said, but drive rapid transformation for your customers. And
Mhm,
so one way I believe that you're doing that is with your teams.
mhm.
And you always say to your teams, think like operators, but act like tech experts. So what do you mean by that? How are your teams finding that balance and just sort of utilizing that expertise to tackle some of the challenges that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I've also added one additional thing to acting like a tech expert, but act like an investor, right? If you're going to act like an investor and it's your money, how are you going to recoup the ROI, right?
Yeah.
What is that, right? So again, we're listening to our customers. I want to make sure that I overemphasize that because we do that all the time, and that is the first thing, right? I say there, you're blessed with one mouth but two ears, so listen twice and talk once, right? So we want to make sure that when we go at this, we're really listening to what the customer needs and wants, right? There's this time to value, and this time to value is critical today. It's absolutely critical. You know, company terminals, everybody goes into these massive, long IT projects, and those massive projects that take years. They choose time, resources. If management changes, then you start back at zero. And so you go back and forth all the time with it. So again, one of the things that we have done in order to do is that we have taken this and we have built what I call our world class team. I'm very blessed, as I said, at the top of the show, that we have got fantastic folks that work for Lincoln. We have got together some operational and technical experts that has just created this phenomenal bench of experts that can go in and walk and talk and say what we're going to do. So we'll own it because we can walk in with somebody on the right and somebody on the left. We can hear the problem. We can say, nope, we've seen it. And here is what we have improved. Here is what we can do. Here's what we need to work towards, or here's what we need to build. And then we embed them with the customers alongside them to accelerate the project.
Hmm. And that's what you mean by rapid transformation rather than these long, drawn out tech implementations, which I'm
Oh,
sure is probably music to everybody's ears because at this point, everybody, I think all supply chain professionals on the planet have been through a few of those, if not one of those. And, they just want to see improvements. We just sort of want to snap our fingers and see it happen.
uh, amen. Like, I mean, we have all been there in many different aspects, but in this particular world that we live in today, in the marine and rail and depot world, yeah, it's tough. It is just a very, very long cycle.
So we've talked about collaboration, and you also talk about the importance of consolidation, providing inclusive, holistic solutions.
Yeah.
But in such an interconnected industry, why is that consolidation so important? I mean, I still feel like we're somewhat siloed, which is so disappointing to me because I feel like we can do so much more with consolidation and collaboration.
Yeah,
And
it is. You're right. Sorry.
well, and how are you working with customers to just sort of pull that infrastructure, the equipment, the technology, the people together just into that one highly orchestrated model?
That's part of the secret sauce, right?
Tell me your secret sauce.
it gets back to people, right? And so if you've got people that can walk and talk that, you're able to understand the issues and the complexities better, right? So there's that. But sorry, let's face it, tech is not perfect. Everybody wants to think that, if you apply this tech, that you're going to have it immediately, everything is better. And that's not the case at all. Tech isn't perfect, right? It has to be tweaked. It has to be moved. It has to be done because you have that idiosyncrasy of the local or the regional or the national or whatever happens. And so that requires communication, that requires power, that requires people. And, in order to get all those things, you have to resolve all of those particular exceptions in real time. And so we are now bundling that together with our solution set so we can do that in real time. And again, that is part of our secret sauce as well. How do you staff? How do you man? How do you do that? How do you take the tech, tweak it, turn it to the left or turn it to the right, but then involve your communication, junior power, and your people in order to get those exceptions so you can move that box, that container in or out of that particular, environment. And then it's also orchestrating these data nodes, right? So we're all about what I call these data nodes. And so we're taking different parts, whether it's our system or somebody else's system, it doesn't really matter. And we're putting into what we call our brain layer. And then we interpret that, and then we pass that to the top, right? So the terminal operating system, we're able to pass that to the top. If we pass that to the top, then the management, the local management, regional management, and national management, depending upon whether they've got a decentralized or a centralized process, they, from the information that they're gaining from us to move to the top, they can what I call execute the next best move. And so when you're able to do that, that's where the efficiency comes in. That's where the authorization starts to come in. And that's the part that gets really tough.
Yeah, when you were talking about moving to the left and moving to the right, you remember that old toy that we used to have that you would move it to the right and then it
Yeah.
would go,
Yeah.
like the line would go and you'd have to try to draw with this thing. And it was so awful. I couldn't do it. I don't know anybody who could do it.
So,
When you said that, it kind of made me visualize that toy. We're going back old school. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
so Etch a Sketch, as they were called.
Oh, is that what it's called? I couldn't even remember.
Sarah, I may have an Etch a Sketch that I may bring out one of these times and show you how I can move left to right.
Oh, okay. So the Lynxis platform is based on an Etch-a-Sketch, just so we're clear. And then I want to talk to you because at the top of this, I mentioned that, there's a slow flow of cargo. And I mean, it is a little bit slow. We're talking about optimizing that, but there's a lot of risks when we have the slow moving cargo. So talk to us about those risks and how using this orchestration model and this technology is going to help eliminate those risks.
Yeah. So, tech obviously is a critical part of the digitalization of the terminal, right? So when we start to look at that, it's, what are we doing to prep for what I call our next step, right? So we are taking painstaking issues and we're going in and we're moving towards what I call the AI. Sorry, I know that's another buzzword. But it's really driving the vision system with AI behind that, right? So it's the computer vision system that we're looking at and how to do it in real time, right? So you don't have this latency effect where you can actually say, oh, I can do that, and this is in real time. So we're looking at the inventory and the accuracy of the inventory at any facility. And so when we start to look at that and boil that down to really, what are the advanced techniques in order to solve that mission critical technology, that's the next phase of where we're at, right? So OCR, is table stakes, right? That's been around for literally 20, 30 years, probably more. I don't know exactly, but we're now moving into the vision system aspect of it, where we are not so dependent upon all of the heavy infrastructure and all of the various hardware aspects. So we're moving away from that and how to look at what are the vision systems that are driving this. And that's where we're concentrating an enormous amount of firepower on, not only from an acquisition stage, but also an investment stage. But we're just not looking at it in the space. We're looking at, I'm doing an enormous amount of travel to all different types of various verticals to look at what they're doing to solve for the problem. And then bringing that back in to how we can help solve that problem, right? So again, so it's about building the tech in the organization to proactively monitor all these things using real-time vision systems in order to keep the flow of goods moving well and increase the velocity.
Well, and just the fact that you're traveling to all these locations just to really get a good sense of how people are thinking. Again, what you were doing with the drivers, a couple of years ago, you're now doing with the terminals to really, how are you thinking about things? What is the mental barrier, right? What's that change management component that we need to get through in order for us to get to this place of, steady flow of goods rather than slow flow of goods and create that win-win scenario. So if we brought everybody to the table, what does your ideal day and life look like? What would you eliminate? What are the risks that you no longer have to think about? Like, I'm sure these are the questions and I don't have to tell you. I'm just getting excited about the conversations that you're having and the information, the data that you're collecting to be able to create something that is going to make a difference rather than creating something without that data and information that nobody wants.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? So when you start to compile, I call them data nodes, when you start to compile these data nodes and you start to look at, the results of what you're finding from data node A, data node B, data node C, and you start to look at that and you say, wow, this makes sense if I started at 7 o'clock versus 6 o'clock, or whatever that may be, or whatever, if I moved this train first versus that, or I moved this box first and I did this, I stockpiled here, whatever that may be, you're able to start to look at the data behind it to make it consult and model against what you're doing, right? So there's this whole concept which I absolutely love called the digital twin. So we are absolutely in the digital twin game. How do we model something against really what a hypothetical is, and then what real life is, and how do you look at the differences between that and which one works better, right? And you can only do that with the different data nodes that come in order to make that decision for what you're going to do next.
Yeah. Well, in the simulation, right? If you're basically talking about simulation.
Correct.
Let's figure out the scenarios. Let's try the different scenarios, and figure out which one is going to help us move forward. But also it's going to be able to give you a picture of what you're doing currently and how much time that's taking versus trying something a little bit different, and how much time that's going to save you. Time, energy, money, resources, like you name it.
You need all the above, right?
And also like the gamification aspect. That's kind of fun. I'm not.
It's super, super, super fun, right? When you start to look at the hypotheticals, you can think, oh yeah, but what if, right? And so when you start to look at that versus reality, sometimes you get very different pictures. But the other thing is that you can take somebody in that environment, you can actually have somebody that isn't really an efficient operator and make them more efficient.
So you're actually enhancing somebody in their position.
Absolutely, right? So don't be afraid of the technology, embrace the technology, because the technology is only going to help you do your job better. Right?
Yeah, well, and have fun with it, right? Who doesn't want to gamify their day to day?
Yeah, it's only help enhancing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people think it's going to eliminate, but if we change that mindset around enhancing it, that makes all the world of difference. Now, do you have a case study that you can share with us of?
Yeah, so I think I could probably whip off a number of them, right? But so when I start, I'll just give you one other example that I actually like. So in terms of orchestration, in terms of optimization, right? So how they all impact together and everything else before I move into some of the business use cases and some of the folks that was helpful along the way. And I love using this one, Sarah. And so you may have heard me say this before, but today when you travel out of Canada, or when I'm traveling out of Boston and I'm going somewhere, right? When I go to the airport now, I'm part of TSA.
Me too.
Right. So we're all part of TSA, or if both said I, so you clearly understand this as well. So if I go into pre-TSA, I get to go through and I get to flip over my phone. It sees that I'm pre-TSA approved right on my boarding pass, because the pre-TSA has worked with the airline company, who's worked with the airport, who's worked with the folks that are on there. And so they're taking all these different systems, put them together into one in order to help you, the traveler, go through to get to your destination faster, quicker, and more efficiently.
And not take off your shoes. I mean, that's just an added bonus.
Absolutely, right? So when you go through and you've got pre-TSA, because you've done all these necessary steps, and behind the scenes, you've had the airport, you've had the people, you've had the machines, you've had the technology, you've had all the different things all the different things collaborate and optimize and orchestrate, you get to move through the system quicker, fast, right? Now, if you're a person that didn't go through and is not pre-TSA and you decide to show up at the airport, right? You have no ticket, no credit card, no ID. Well, good luck for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that adds a layer of complexity. And believe it or not, the reason why I say that is, look, you would not believe how many terminals, marine, rail, or depots operate with no pre-TSA.
No pre-clearance.
No pre-check, no pre-check, right? So just think if we can help solve just a portion of that.
Mm-hmm.
How much better it would be for whether you're a large terminal or you're a small terminal, whether you are in Indonesia or whether you're in Florida.
Or you're a driver that have to wait hours.
Bingo. Remember, right? That's near and dear to my heart, right? From a driver perspective, without a doubt. So
I love that.
And so with that, right, the end result is, 30% more volume, roughly, in the same space, in a shorter amount of time. right? So again, you start to click off all those boxes.
Mhm. I love that. So then what kind, can you give us an actual case study where they've
Yeah,
seen
for sure.
ROI? I know you just gave us a percentage, 30 to
Yeah,
40%,
for
but is
sure.
there another one with some
Yeah,
ROI?
one large 3PL system that we've got, they installed our gate system, Ready Gate. And so what we did is that we achieved a manless gate, a remote controlled operations center at this facility in 3 weeks, right? If we had taken that and not applied our Ready Gate system and not applied that, it would have been the better part of on the short side of 6 months to a year in order to get that project done.
Wow.
We did it all turnkey in 3 weeks, right?
Wow.
Another example is that we one of the large Class One railroads, Big Orange, as I like to call them, in perhaps you know who they are. We did something very similar where we had the tech and the remote exception services working automating the train inventory for the arrival process, and as a result of that, so it's called Rail Portal. And so as a result of that, we reduced their process by 42%.
Wow. Those are some big numbers.
They really are, right? And so again, these are the areas that we're touching that we're really proud of.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, um, Sarah, we have not launched officially yet, right? So
Right.
this is the first time that I'm coming out and I'm actually having this conversation with you about, hey, this is what Lynxis does. We are still we're still in camouflage mode right now. We have not officially come out and say,
Right.
these are the companies that we've acquired. This is exactly what we're doing, everything else. So I'm very excited to tell part of the story, but there's a lot more to be told.
Yeah. Yeah. And you chose Let's Talk Supply Chain to do it. And you're going to have to stay tuned because we have many more episodes coming up that is going to dive a little bit more deeper into their secret sauce. Now, before we go, I know that Lynxis believes that the landside logistics facilities of tomorrow will operate quite differently than they do today. What's that ultimate vision? What will they look like? What can we expect from Lynxis in the coming year as you work towards making that vision a reality?
Yeah, so great question. Again, I could probably go on for days about this, but I'll try to be short because I know we've got some limited amount of time. But so think about today, right? You think of all these big terminals that are operating globally today, and they're massive, right? And they're fully automated. And they've got these workforces, that are controlling operation, resolving problems, and everything is done remotely, inexpensive cameras, a lot of technology, right? They're the ideas, etc. So our goal is that to take, as we've all been subject to what I call, the whole process that Amazon has done, right? You bring everything closer. We used to pushing a button, seeing it, the dominoes, as well. You can see your pizza be made for a $7 pie, $10 pie. You can see it be made, and you know when it's going to be delivered, right? So it's all about it. How do you bring that closer to the consumer, right, or to the end user, right? So from that perspective, it is how do we make these facilities more efficient, darker, cheaper, and how do we make them go into what I call this urban aspect? And so you've seen this multi-use concept that's, deployed in real estate today, where you've got retail, you have living, and then you've got commercial all in one building. The same exact thing is how do we bring these containers closer where they're not making a lot of noise, where it's dark, you barely know that they are there. They're in a much smaller footprint, they're efficient. How do you build that? Make it so it blends in. And then so what you do is that, again, you're optimizing to get product or features and employment closer out. So you're not so relying on all of these massive terminals, these massive depots, and so you can bring that forward. And so our goal is to democratize the approach and make the manual terminals more automated without spending millions of dollars on technical customers.
Well, I can't wait because I feel like that is the future of cargo. It's the future of landside, and I can't wait to see your vision come to fruition. So, from aging infrastructure to financial constraints, labor issues to increasing environmental regulation, cargo terminals and landside logistics facilities are facing big challenges, many years in the making. But Lynxis wants to change all of that. They're on a mission to drive rapid transformation with their consolidated platform of solutions and subject matter expertise that bring bring unmatched synergy to key nodes and modes, allowing customers to mitigate risk that bring inefficiency to their operations across the enterprise. So did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you what percentage of trade by value was handled by the nation's ports in 2022. Well, it's a massive 42.9%, over $2.28 trillion of the U.S. international trade by value. So it's vital that we keep our ports and landside logistics facilities moving. If you want to find out more, you can check them out at Lynxis, LYNXIS.com. And if you'd like to hear more from us, we have plenty more content for you featuring the best and brightest in the industry. Head over to letstalksupplychain.com. And remember to come back next week. I'm going to be joined by Relish for another episode in our 3-part collaboration, and you're not going to want to miss this one. Larry, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and giving us a glimpse into the future of cargo with Lynxis.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And talk to you soon.